Chapter 4, Part 2 of the Life and Letters of Elizabeth Prentiss, by George Prentiss. This recording is in the public domain. Recording by Teresa Downey. Passing over another year, which was marked by no incidents requiring special mention, we come again to a birth and a death in close conjunction. On the 22nd of October, 1848, her second child, Edward Payson, was born. On the 17th of November, her mother died. Of the life of this child, she herself has left a minute record, portions of which will be given later. In a letter to his sister, dated New Bedford, November 21st, her husband thus refers to her mother's departure: "We have just received the sad intelligence of Mother Payson's death. She passed away very peacefully, as if going to sleep, at 5:30 on Friday afternoon. Dear Lizzie was at first quite overwhelmed, as I knew she would be, for her attachment to her mother was uncommonly tender and devoted, but she is now perfectly tranquil, and will soon, I trust, be able to think of her irreparable loss with a melancholy pleasure even. There is much in the case that is peculiarly fitted to produce a cheerful resignation. Mrs. Payson has been a severe sufferer, and since the breaking up of her home in Portland, she has felt, I think, an increasing detachment from the world. I was exceedingly struck with this during her visit here last winter. She seemed to me to be fast ripening for heaven. It is such a comfort to us that she was able to name our little boy." Mrs. Payson died in the 65th year of her age. She was a woman of most attractive and admirable qualities, full of cheerful life and energy, and a whole-hearted disciple of Jesus. A few extracts from Mrs. Prentiss's letters will show how deeply she felt her loss. To her youngest brother she writes: "How gladly I would go, if I could, to see you all, and talk over with you the thousand things that are filling our minds and hearts. We cannot drain this bitter cup at one draught, and then go on our way as though it has never been. The loss of a mother is never made up or atoned for, and ours was such a mother, so peculiar in her devotion and tenderness and sympathy. I cannot mourn that her sorrowful pilgrimage is over, cannot think for a moment of wishing she were still on earth, weeping and praying and suffering, but for myself and for you and for all I mourn with hourly tears. She has sacrificed herself for us." To her friend Mrs. Lord she writes, January 23rd: "It seems to me that every day and hour I miss my dear mother more and more, and I feel more and more painfully how much she suffered during her last years and months. Dear Louise, I thought I knew that she could not live long, but I never realized it, and even now I keep trying to hope that she is not really gone. Just in this very spot where I now sit writing, my dear mother's great easy chair used to sit, and here, only a year ago, she was praying for and loving me. Oh, if I had only known she was dying then, and could have talked with her about heaven till it had grown to seeming like a home to which she should be going, and whither I should follow her sooner or later. But it is all over, and I would not have her here again, if the shadow of a wish could restore her to us. I only earnestly long to be fitting, day by day, to meet her again in heaven. God has mingled many great mercies with this affliction, and I do not know that I ever in my life so felt the delight of praying to and thanking Him. When I begin to pray, I have so much to thank Him for that I hardly know how to stop. I have always thought I would not for the universe be left unchastised, and now I feel the smart, and still can say so. Lottie's visit was a great comfort and service to me, but I was very selfish in talking to her so much about my own loss, while she was so great a sufferer under hers. Since she left, my little boy has been worse than ever, and pined away last week very rapidly. You can form no idea by any description of his sufferings, of what the dear little creature has undergone since his birth. I feel a perfect longing to see Portland, and mother's many dear friends there, especially your mother and a few like her. I am very tired, as I have written a great part of this with baby in my lap, so I can write no more. To Mrs. Stearns, February 17, 1849. Dear little Eddie has found life altogether unkind thus far, and I have had many hours of heartache on his account, but I hope he may weather the storm and come out safely yet. The doctor examined him all over yesterday, particularly his head, and said he could not make him out a sick child, but that he thought his want of flesh owing partly to his sufferings, but more to the great loss of sleep occasioned by his sufferings. Instead of sleeping 12 hours out of the 24, he sleeps but about 7, and that by means of laudanum. Isn't it a mercy that I have been able to bear so well the fatigue and care and anxiety of these 4 hard months? I feel that I have had nothing to complain of, and a great deal to be thankful for. On the whole, notwithstanding my grief about my dear mother's loss, and my perplexity and distress about baby, I have had as much real happiness this winter as it is possible for one to glean in such unfavorable circumstances. By far the greatest trial I have to contend with is that of losing all power to control my time. A little room all of my own, and a regular hour, morning and night, all of my own, would enable me, I think, to say, "Now let life do its worst." I am no stranger, I assure you, to the misgivings you describe in your last letter. I think them the result of the wish without the will to be holy. We pray for sanctification, and then are afraid God will sanctify us by stripping us of our idols, and feel distressed lest we cannot have them and Him too. Reading the life of Madame Guyon gave me great pain and anxiety, I remember. I thought that if such spiritual darkness and trial as she was in for many years was a necessary attendant on eminent piety, I could not summon courage to try to live such a life. Of all the anguish in the world there is nothing like this, the sense of God without the sense of nearness to Him. I wish you would always think aloud when you write to me. I long to see you and the children, and Mr. S., and so does George. Poor G. has had a very hard time of it ever since little Eddie's birth. So much care, and worry, and sleeplessness, and labor, and how he is ever to get any rest, I don't see. These are the times that try our souls. Let nobody condole with me about our bodies. It is the struggle to be patient, and gentle, and cheerful, when pressed down, and worn upon, and distracted, that costs us so much. I think when I have had all my children, if there is anything left of me, I shall write about the battle of life more eloquently than Dickens has done. I had a pleasant dream about mother and Abby the other night. They came together to see me, and both seemed so well and so happy. I feel perfectly happy now that my dear mother has gone home. To the same, May 7, 1849. I used to think it hard to be sick when I had dear mother hanging over me, doing all she could for my relief. But it is harder to be denied the poor comfort of being let alone, and to have to drag one's self out of bed to take care of a baby. Mr. Stearns must know how to pity me, for my real sick headaches are very like his, and when racked with pain, dizzy, faint, and exhausted with suffering, starvation, and sleeplessness, it is terrible to have to walk the room with a crying child. I thought as I lay, worn out even to childishness, obliged for the baby's sake to have bright sunlight streaming into the chamber, and to keep my eyes and ears on the alert for the same cause, how still we used to think the house must be left when my father had these headaches, and how mother busied herself all day long about him, and how nice his little plate of hot steak used to look as he sat up to eat it when the sickness had gone, and how I am suffering here all alone with nobody to give me even a look of encouragement. George was out of town on my sickest day. When he was at home he did everything in the world he could to keep the children still, but here they must be, and I must direct about every trifle, and have them on the bed with me. I am getting desperate, and feel disposed to run furiously in the traces till I drop dead on the way. Don't think me very wicked for saying so. I am jaded in soul and body, and hardly know what I do want. If tea comes, George, at all events, will get relief, and that will take a burden from my mind. I want Lina to come this summer. There is a splendid swing on iron hooks under a tree at the house we are going to move into. Wouldn't that be nice for Jeanie and Mary's other children if they come? I wish I had a little fortune, not for myself, but to gather my folks together with. I shall not write you, my dear, another complaining letter. Do excuse this. This letter shows the extremity of her trouble, but it is a picture merely. The reality was something beyond description. Only young mothers who know it by experience can understand its full meaning. Now, however, the storm for a while abated. The young relative whose loving devotion had ministered to the comfort of her dying mother came to her own relief, and passed the next 6 months at New Bedford, helping take care of Eddie. In the course of the spring, too, his worst symptoms disappeared, and hope took the place of fear and despondency. Referring to this period, his mother writes in Eddie's journal: "On the Saturday succeeding his birth, we heard of my dear mother's serious illness, and when he was about 3 weeks old, of her death. We were not surprised that his health suffered from the shock it thus received. He began at once to be affected with distressing colic, which gave him no rest, day or night. His father used to call him a little martyr, and such indeed he was for many long, tedious months. On the 16th of February the doctor came and spent 2 hours in carefully investigating his case. He said it was a most trying condition of things, and he would gladly do something to relieve me, as he thought I had been through enough to kill 10 men. When Eddie was about 8 months old, the doctor determined to discontinue the use of opiates. He was now a fine, healthy baby, bright-eyed and beautiful, and his colic was reducing itself to certain seasons on each day, instead of occupying the whole day and night as heretofore. We went through fire and water almost in trying to procure for him natural sleep. We swung him in blankets, wheeled him in little carts, walked the room with him by the hour, etc., etc. But it was wonderful how little sleep he attained after all. He always looked wide awake, and as if he did not need sleep. His eyes had gradually become black, and when after a day of fatigue and care with him, he would at last close them, and we would flatter ourselves that now we too should snatch a little rest, we would see them shining upon us in the most amusing manner, with an expression of content and even merriment. About this time he was baptized. I well remember how in his father's study, and before taking him to church, we gave him to God. He was very good while his papa was performing the ceremony, and looked so bright and so well that many who had never seen him in his state of feebleness found it hard to believe he had been aught save a vigorous and healthy child. My own health was now so broken down by long sleeplessness and fatigue that it became necessary for me to leave home for a season. Dr. Mayhew promised to run in every day to see that all went well with Eddie. His aunty was more than willing to take this care upon herself, and many of our neighbors offered to go often to see him, promising to do everything for his safety and comfort if I would only go. Not aware how miserable a state I was in, I resolved to be absent only 1 week, but was away for a whole month. A part of the month, with her husband and little daughter, she passed at Newburyport. His brother, S.S. Prentiss, whose name was then renowned all over the land as an orator and patriot, had come North for the last time, bringing his wife and children with him. It was a never to be forgotten family gathering under the aged mother's roof. On my return, she continues in Eddie's journal, I found him looking finely. He had an ill turn owing to teething, which they had kept from me, but had recovered from it and looked really beautiful. His father and Uncle S.S. had been to see him once during our vacation, and we were now expecting them again with his Aunt Mary and her 3 children, and his grandmother. We depended a great deal on seeing Eddie and Una together, as she was his twin cousin, and only a few hours older than he. But on the very evening of their arrival he was taken sick, and although they all saw him that night looking like himself, by the next morning he had changed sadly. He grew ill and lost flesh and strength very fast, and no remedies seemed to have the least effect on his disorder, which was one induced by teething. For myself, I did not believe anything could now save my precious baby, and had given him to God so unreservedly that I was not conscious of even a wish for his life. When at last we saw evident tokens of returning health and strength, we felt that we received him a second time as from the grave. To me he never seemed the same child. My darling Eddie was lost to me, and another, and yet the same, filled his place. I often said afterward that a little stranger was running about in my nursery, not mine, but God's. Indeed, I can't describe the peculiar feelings with which I always regarded him after this sickness, nor how the thought constantly met mine, he is not mine, he's God's. Every night I used to thank Him for sparing him to me one day longer, thus truly enjoying him a day at a time. An extract from a letter to Miss Lord, written on the anniversary of her mother's death, will close the account of this year. If I were in Portland now, I should go right down to see you. I feel just like having a dear, old fashioned talk with you. I was thinking how many times death had entered that old Richmond circle of which you and I once formed a part. Mrs. Persico, Susan, Charlotte Ford, Kate Kennedy, and now our own dearest Lottie, all gone. I cannot tell you how much I miss and grieve for Lottie. I cannot be thankful enough that I went to Portland in the summer and had that last week with her, nor for her most precious visit here last winter. Whenever you think of any little thing she said, I want you to write it down for me, no matter whether it seems worth writing or not. I know by experience how precious such things are. This is a sad day to me. Indeed, all of this month has been so, recalling as it has done all I was suffering at this time last year, and all my dear mother was then suffering. I can hardly realize that she has been in heaven a whole year, and that I feel her loss as vividly as if it were but yesterday, indeed more so. I do not feel that this affliction has done me the good it ought to have done, and that I hoped it would. As far as I have any excuse, it lies in my miserable health. I want so much to be more of a Christian, to live a life of constant devotion. Do tell me when you write if you have such troubled thoughts, and such difficulty in being steadfast and unmovable. Oh, how I sigh for the sort of life I led in Richmond, and which was more or less the life of the succeeding years at home. My husband tries to persuade me that the difference is more in my way of life, and that then being my time for contemplation, now is my time for action. But I know myself that I have lost ground. You must bear me in mind when you pray, my dear Louise, for I never had so much need of praying, nor so little time or strength for it. End of Chapter 4, Part 2 of The Life and Letters of Elizabeth Prentiss, by George Prentiss. Recording by Teresa Downey.